Greetings, and welcome to my channel. I'm the Anunnaki Theorist. Today I would like to explore, using the Anunnaki theory, the origins of the Bible. Now, when I'm talking the Bible, we're talking the origins of the Bible. We're not talking the Christian King James Version or the New International Version. No, we're talking about the origins of the Bible, which would be the Hebrew Torah, Tanakh, and Talmud. These would be the first manuscripts, the first scrolls. In fact, the Torah, even today, is not in a book. It is a scroll. So, we're going to talk about a possible. Now, remember, none of these are factual. They're not facts. They're not truths. They're possibilities. So this is a possible explanation of where and how the Bible came about using the Anunnaki theory. So the first thing that I want to look at is a belief, a school of thought, Pan-Babylonianism. And this is basically where it was believed that because there's a lot of stories out there that predate the Bible, that predate the Torah, the Tanakh, and the Talmud. And these stories all originate roughly in the same place. We've got the Akkadian, we've got the Sumerian, the Assyrian, and then the Babylonian. And it is believed by some, I mean, it's not something that's widely accepted, but it's believed that all these stories are the same. It's just that somebody at some point went ahead and altered these stories, these histories, to suit their agenda. Now, it's like the Babylonians. They took from the Assyrians, and the Assyrians took from the Akkadians, and the Akkadians took from the Sumerians. And according to mainstream academia, the Sumerians were first. They were the first civilization. They were the first writers, so on and so forth. So we look at the origins of things, it all goes back to the Sumerians. But the Sumerians didn't write the Bible. They didn't write the Torah, the Tanakh, the Talmud. We look at various places that have, I guess, what you would call credible information. And I know some people, when they say Nova, it's like, is that credible? Maybe. But I look at it as just a way of them, of someone presenting information to people. And Nova does a pretty good job of it. So we're looking at Nova here. And we see here the dark years of exile. Now I'm going to post a link for this, so if anybody wants to look at it themselves, they can read the full article, because it is very fascinating. But we're going to primarily focus on Babylon. And here we find out that, you've got the Judeans. I'm not going to call them the Jews. I'm not going to call them the Israelites. They're Judeans. They come from Judah. Okay? And Jerusalem happens to be the capital of Judah. So, you've got the Judeans that, well, the Babylonians, they kind of conquered them. I mean, at first it wasn't really a conquering. They kind of set up a puppet king, and the puppet king didn't kind of do his thing, paying tribute and stuff like that. So, King Nebuchadnezzar went in there and just freaking totaled the place. I mean, razed the city to the ground. And of course, this is just one of the destructions of the Temple of Solomon. But anyway, they razed the city to the ground and they took people as prisoners. There was only so many people that were allowed to actually stay in the remnants of Jerusalem, and they were mostly the peasants, the lower class individuals. But the upper class, minus the high up royals, because they were executed. But the rest of the upper class, the nobility, the priests, the scribes, things like that, they were actually taken back to Babylon. Now we can see a little bit more. And of course, I'm using Wikipedia again. I know a lot of people have a problem with that, but it's easy. It's information that's all compiled in one place, and they do have references and citations. But anyway, here is where, according to mainstream academia, we see 587 BCE. And it tells you about the siege of Jerusalem. It tells you about how King Nebuchadnezzar came in there, sieged Jerusalem, eventually razed it to the ground, destroyed it. And of course, this is in the Bible. This is in the Bible. They actually go into, how, but of course this was supposed to be, a wrath of God, because the Judeans, they turned away from God and started worshiping pagan gods and other belief systems and so on and so forth. Now, again, the gods, especially like the pagan gods and so on and so forth, this was the Anunnaki. Okay, so if these Judeans were starting to worship the pagan gods, they were starting to worship the other Anunnaki gods. They were going against, well, whoever, their chief deity would have been, which, is Jehovah or Jehovah, Yahweh, which this would have been Enlil to the Sumerians. And Enlil, if he cared about mankind at all whatsoever, he's seen us as tools. And, if we were going to misbehave, this is the reason why he was wrathful and vengeful. Because if we were going to misbehave, you don't want your tool misbehaving. So you've got to get mean with them. I mean, Enki was the good, the forgiving, loving, caring God, whereas Enlil was the wrathful, because he just really didn't want mankind to begin with. But supposedly, they fell away from worshiping Yahweh, and now God was going to send this ravaging horde to, punish them. If that's the case, we don't know. We just know the facts, the history that says that Nebuchadnezzar came in and destroyed Jerusalem. Now, when they destroyed Jerusalem, they took the nobility back to Babylon. And in Babylon, this is where we get to where the Jews, they felt oppressed. I mean, they were captives, and they were made to do manual labor, dig ditches, work in the mines, whatever the Babylonians, needed at the time. And they were also forced to conform to the Babylonian beliefs. Now, this was going to cause them to feel a loss of identity. They feared that their culture and their way of life and their belief systems were going to be eradicated. Now, prior to this, prior to them feeling threatened that their way of life was going to go out of existence, prior to that, they were primarily a verbal and oral tradition when it comes to their religion, their histories, things like this. They memorized and repeated. They didn't write much down. There is writings. I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, wait a minute." No, the Judeans, they did write. Yes, they did. There is some writings that they did. It shows their histories and their religions. But for the most part, they were oral. So now, they're here in captivity, and they call it captivity or exile, the Babylonian exile. And while in exile, while having to work, while having to conform to the Babylonian way of life and the Babylonian religion, and fearing the loss of their identity, they started exploring. See, they had access to the scribes and the priests and the libraries of Babylon. And so now they've seen all these histories, these things that were supposed to be passed down for hundreds of years. Granted, they were copies and rewrites of original stories and original histories, and these things were rewritten to reflect the agenda of the people who were writing them. So the scribes and the priests of Judah, they went ahead and they took these histories and these stories, rewrote them, and started putting in their venerated characters in replace of the actual characters. Well, they're not the actual characters, but the characters that the Babylonians put in. This is the reason why, when we look at the flood story, the Babylonians, well, I'm not exactly sure which name they would have used. I think they used Atrasis, because the Zasudra is the Sumerian Noah, but the Judeans, they took out Atrasis and Zasudra and Updapishtim, and they put in Noah. Noah was the character that they venerated for whatever reason. Was he an actual person? Did they actually know him? I don't know. But this would be the reason why the story is there in the Bible, in the Torah, and also in ancient stories that are thousands of years old. Now, one of the other things that I want to talk about when we get into the Babylonian religion, and this would give us a reason for things, okay? You know, when you look in the Bible, especially in the New Testament, but when you look in the Bible, Babylon is this bad place. I mean, it's this really, really bad place. And this is the reason why. It's because the Judeans were forced to live in Babylon. They were forced to conform to Babylonian culture, and they were forced to be in the Babylonian religion. And one of the things that we look at when we look at the Babylonian religion is we look at the Babylonian gods. Now, I'm going to get into this in a future video, but I'm just going to tell you right now. The chief deity of Babylon was the god Marduk, also known as Baal, or Baal, however you want to pronounce it. But Marduk was the Hasatan, which just means, in Hebrew, the adversary, which they removed the Ha and just made him Satan. But this is just a possibility. I mean, you can look at this information. All the links will be in the description, as always. Go and look, go and read, look at the references, go and look at other places. This information is out there. All you gotta do is connect the dots. And I think that's what a lot of people don't like to do. They don't like to connect the dots. Because then you get into confirmation bias, and it's like, ooh, that's a bad thing. But it's out there. And as I always say, go look for yourself. No authority figure, no religious figure, no academic figure. They can make the suggestion, but you need to go look for yourself. You need to go do the research. I'm giving you the tools. I'm giving you the information. Go and look for yourself. I'm the Anunnaki Theorist. Enjoy.